Fallujah has been closed as a city for 2 months. Nahida is one of the first Fallujahs to go back home since the Americans occupied the city. She wanted to show me what had been left behind.
Look at it. Furniture, clothes thrown everywhere. They smashed up the cupboards and they wrote something bad in the dressing table mirror.
She doesn't speak English, so I explained to her what the words mean.
I knew it. I knew those words were insulting.
This all happened in November. The Americans began a major assault. They called it Phantom Fury. They wanted to clear the city of terrorists and make Iraq safer ahead of the January elections. Independent information from inside the city was hard to come by. The American forces claimed they killed 1,200 insurgents. They said Fallujah and Iraq were safer. But what I have seen and heard inside Fallujah tells a different story. Every Fallujah knows the song. It was written after the war and is full of hatred towards the Americans. It's impossible to live in the city at the moment. There is no water, no electricity and no sewage. It's almost a city of ghosts. Most of the 350,000 people who used to live there now live in refugee camps. I wanted to get inside the city, but it was closed, so I started by looking for Fallujahs in the surrounding villages and camps. I began my journey in Habaniya, 35 kilometers west of Fallujah. This place used to be a tourist resort. Saddam's own son, Uday, used to come here for his holidays. People here are cutting down trees and making fires to keep warm. Abu Rabia has been living here for 2 months now.
We're meant to be the country of oil, aren't we? But look at me, I'm measuring the kerosene for this lamp by the drop. We've no heat here, we're using wood for the fire.
These people are freezing. They have received no food aid for 3 months. They are meant to be voting on January the 30th.
We won't vote, we just won't vote. They must take us back to our houses first.
Inside one of the tents, I met Hamid Allawi. I asked him if he had received his voting papers.
No, I didn't receive them, and I don't want them anyway. None of the Fallujahs here have got their voting coupons.
Suddenly we were told that some people were unhappy that we were filming. It felt dangerous, and we had to leave. We go straight to Saklawiya, a village just north of Fallujah. At Friday prayers, the talk is all about the elections.
When they hand out food rations, they should give us our voting papers as well. Why isn't the government giving people here their vote?
Sheikh Jamal al-Muhammadi is a powerful man. Many Fallujah refugees come to listen to his sermons. He gets very emotional when he talks about last November's attack.
And I saw with my own eyes the Holy Quran thrown to the floor of the mosque by those sons of pigs and monkeys. The Americans were treading on the Holy Quran and it broke my heart.
I wanted to speak to the Sheikh because back in November the Americans had asked him to remove bodies from Fallujah. I wanted to know what he'd seen.
The Americans had marked the houses that had dead bodies in them with a cross. That's where we found the martyrs. In my opinion, these people were civilians, not terrorists. They were men who had stayed behind in the city to protect their homes. I say this because we found the bodies in groups of 2 or 3 or 4. It was Ramadan and people would naturally gather together for iftar, the first meal after fasting. We found the bodies right behind their front doors. It looked to me as if they'd opened their front doors to the Americans and had been immediately shot dead. That's how we found them.
يرمون النار يطلقون النار فيقتلون فوجدناهم يعني قتلى 4 منهم هكذا.
Sheikh Jamal took me to a cemetery on the edge of the city. He showed me where he had buried the bodies. He claimed none of them had weapons with them, and that he had found an old man of 90 who had been shot dead in his kitchen. The gravestones had no names, only numbers. I counted 76 of them. The Americans claim they killed 1,200. So even if these people were insurgents, where are the other graves? I wanted to get inside Fallujah itself, but to do that, I have to get the new Fallujah identity card. Everyone who wants to return to the city now has to get this ID from the American military. To most Iraqis, this seems crazy. It's the only place in Iraq where you need an ID in order to get into your own city.
This card will allow them to get back into the city in a controlled, organized manner.
But the men queuing for the card told me they saw it as another punishment given to them by the Americans. Fallujans have always been so proud of their city. Concepts such as honor and dignity matter a lot here. So to be fingerprinted by an American soldier just to go home is embarrassing. That's why these men are covering their faces.
This is just another humiliation for the people of Fallujah. I think they are doing it on purpose, just to humiliate us.
My understanding is ultimately they can hang that card on the wall and keep it as a souvenir, but eventually, not too distant in the future, that card's going to be unnecessary for access to Fallujah.
Finally we made it into Fallujah. The first thing we noticed was graffiti saying "Long live the Mujahideen." I couldn't believe it. The whole city is destroyed. It was a big shock. I wasn't prepared for this much destruction. I was here just before the American attack. It's hard to believe this is the same city. Fallujah used to be one of the few modern Iraqi cities, and now there is nothing. The only people I see are Fallujans trying to work out where they used to live. People like Abu Salah, this is all that remains of his home.
Look at these mattresses here. These were for my son's wedding. This was my son's room. And look, here. This was our kitchen. This is the sugar bag that we left in the kitchen, right here. If Alawi really wants us to vote in the elections, then let him come here first and look at the state we're living in.
I could smell bodies beneath the rubble. I went to the old city of Fallujah. This was the place where the 4 American contractors were brutally lynched last March. The Americans don't allow anyone to go here. They say it's not safe. It is a scary place, but these Fallujah people insist on taking me somewhere. They want to show me something really gruesome. I counted 4 dead bodies. They were rotting. It looks like these people were shot while they were sleeping. It's very common for friends in Iraq to sleep in this way together. There are no signs of a gun battle, no bullet holes. I could not see any weapons, no obvious signs that they were insurgents. I'm told they were civilians. Nearby in another house, another dead body. But here, there were definite signs that this was an insurgent. There is an RPG launcher on the roof of his car, and a booby trap bomb by the door. In both cases, the corpses have been eaten by hungry dogs. I see a lot of dead dogs in the city. There is a serious outbreak of rabies.
We received in our hospital many cases suspected to be rabies. You know, we have no toxin or vaccine in our hospital, so most of patients died.
Do you have a figure about the numbers? 20, 30?
About 50 cases.
Dr. Chechen and his colleagues are living in Fallujah's main hospital. The city is empty, so they have no patients. Their only job is to recover the rotting corpses and to bring them for burial. When I went to the main cemetery in Fallujah, they were still burying their dead. 2 months after the fighting started, we still don't know how many Fallujans died. But we do know the American casualty figures. 51 US soldiers were killed and over 400 were wounded. I counted 65 new graves here. There is a sign outside. It says that only martyrs who fought against the Americans can be buried here. The order comes from the Mujahideen Council of Fallujah. I notice a grave of a Syrian fighter. It says he was killed in an operation last June in Baghdad, and he was brought to Fallujah for burial. While I've been in the city, some Fallujans have told me in private that they are angry with the insurgent groups and that they blame them, as well as the Americans, for the destruction of their city. Mr. and Mrs. Salman have just got back to Fallujah. They are looking for their son Ahmed, and they go directly to the cemetery. At first, they can't find his grave.
The chalk gets rubbed off the gravestones. The last one we buried was the Tunisian. Your son is next to him.
Ahmed was 18 years old. He was still at school. His mother had never wanted him to be a fighter.
Ahmed, my dear son, I told you not to go with those men. I told you they were deceiving you, my darling. I blame Ayad Alawi for all this. I'd like to cut his throat. I would like to cut him up into pieces. Even then that wouldn't be enough. I blame Alawi and Saddam.
Shut up, woman!
Ahmed was dead, but what had happened to the other Mujahideen fighters? Had the Americans really wiped them all out? For 2 weeks, we'd been traveling around the villages. I've been trying to get in contact with one insurgent leader. My sources told me he's still alive. Finally, we met him. They call him Abu Sheba. He is the commander of the so-called Army of Muhammad, a Mujahideen group based in Al-Shuhada district in South Fallujah.
The fighters withdrew from the town following an order from our senior leadership, but not because we had lost the fight with the Americans. It was a tactical decision to regroup. We know we will prevail. God willing, we will be victorious, in Fallujah or elsewhere.
He said many ridiculous things in his interview, but this seemed to be true. It explained why I didn't find many Mujahideen fighters' graves. If so many of the insurgents escaped, what did the American forces really achieve in Fallujah? The violence has simply spread to other parts of the country. Over 300,000 people have lost their homes and now bitterly resent the Americans. The city of mosques has become the city of rubble. It's hard to see how this will strengthen Iraq's new democracy. The elections are 2 weeks away, but most of the Fallujans I met will not even be given the chance to vote. The war of central security. All had to the city